Good morning, everyone. My name is Lujain Ismail, and it's with immense pleasure that I welcome you on behalf of Sharjah Art Foundation to the 16th edition of March meeting and the second day of our program. This year, the March meeting theme Tawashujat embodies the spirit of intertwining, collaboration, and the convergence of diverse thoughts and ideas. It reflects our commitment to collectively envisioning more inclusive, equitable, sustainable, and livable futures. March Meeting 2024 Tawashujat explores collaborative methods that reappraise artistic, curatorial, and activist approaches to reconfigure the role of art and artists in our current times. It also looks at the myriad forms of coming together, such as learning platforms, activist movements, and publishing, which can serve as toolkits for social justice, solidarity, and political mobilization. Thank you for joining us here today. We're honored to host esteemed guest speakers, many of whom have journeyed from distant corners of the globe. I'd like to start with a little housekeeping before we begin today's program. Please note that all sessions are in either English or Arabic, and simultaneous translation is available throughout the event. Our team will pass around to check who needs the translation headset. Tea, coffee, and lunch will be provided throughout the day. Our first session is a panel titled Towards Counter-Hegemonic Infrastructures, and it's a pleasure to welcome Yazan Khalili and Lara Khaldi, members of the Question of Funding Collective, Leah Gordon, co-director of Ghetto Biennale, Joachim, Hamou, and Nabila Saidi, representing Trampoline House. This session will be moderated by Zeynep, co-curator of Sharjah Biennale 16. Please join me in welcoming them.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to see everyone here, bright and early in the morning. Welcome to this initial panel of the day, and thank you all for being here, both the guests and the panelists. This is the panel that is called Towards Counter-Hegemonic Infrastructure, as you saw. And we actually got together yesterday and we were talking to one another. Everyone on this panel knew each other before me, well, had shown together, let's say, before me, except me. And we were sort of brainstorming about what we're going to be, how we're going to be structuring this. You're going to be hearing from all of the three collective initiative. Everyone calls themselves separately, and I think that's a big main point that is an important differentiator or a connector that is going to come out. We're going to hear one by one from each of them, but just wanted to sort of frame it as the panel is really about all the economic structures within which we work, and everyone works in their separate localities, localities that are rife with a lot of conflicts, have very long histories of conflicts, and they have thought about how to make these economic structures model, whether through restructuring, redistribution, hacking it, or sort of finding ways around it. And this is sort of a way of thinking about what labor means, what working means, different modalities of coming together or working around structures is, and how in a time like this when we're trying to sort of like keep going, what it means to actually sort of be tactical and sort of think about what the visibility or the invisibility that art brings in means. So these are the questions that we sort of like brainstormed around, and we'll open it up to questions afterwards, after all of the presentations, which are going to be in the order of the question of funding with Yazan and Lara. And that is, the question of funding is a growing collective of cultural producers and community organizers from Palestine. And then it's going to be Joachim and Nabila from Trampoline House. Trampoline House is a volunteer-run community center in Copenhagen for asylum seekers. And then Leah from the Ghetto Biennial is going to be speaking. And the Ghetto Biennial is a cross-cultural arts festival held in Port-au-Prince and hosted by Artis Resistance. So without further ado, Yazan and Lara.
Thank you, Zeynep. Hello. We should mention the birds as one of the speakers, I guess. Yeah, there's lots of birds. And also, thank you for coming this early. It was a challenge for us, even the speakers, to be here this early in the session. And maybe we also want to thank the Sharjah team, the production team, the organizers for all the efforts they are doing. 10 years ago, Lara and I would have been also with the team working. So it's nice to meet everyone again and to be in Sharjah as speakers. Yeah, like this is kind of a long lifelong, which one of them, kind of relation with the Sharjah Foundation and the Sharjah Foundation team. So, and we have a photographer here, little Neil. So you can rest if you want to rest. You can take the phone. So we just sent actually our presentation, and it took us a long time to figure out how to begin. It actually was a big challenge for us to begin to speak about what we have been doing, because we didn't know how to actually approach what we have been doing before the last war on Gaza began. And actually, by coincidence, we were coming on the plane here, and we saw a movie. Yeah. Yeah, on the screen it's called Lakota Nation vs. United States. And usually, like one watches normal Hollywood movies on the plane, but things did not click to watch such thing. But then we went to Fascinating History. And there we found this movie, and we began watching it each on their screen, and we were just watching and looking at each other like, are they talking really about the Lakota Nation, or are they talking about Palestine now? And we felt like, actually, we still don't have the language to speak about Palestine at this moment. And this movie kind of lent us the history, the language to speak through this kind of proximity. And that somehow everything they were saying was speaking to Gaza right now. And the movie just goes about the whole history of the Lakota people resisting the European American invasion of their lands. And in part of it, they speak about how the Americans, the United States, actually actively killed all the buffaloes. And by killing the buffaloes, they killed the economy, the living economy of the Lakota Nation. And then they introduced money as the only way for the Lakota Nation to actually be able to access food and their necessities. And through money and through their control over money, they also controlled the living of the people. They disconnected them from the land. And eventually, many of the Lakotas had to accept peace treaties with the Americans in order to get some money, to be able to buy their stuff. And in one section, actually the last section of it, they speak about, sorry, we just watched the movie once, but I'm just trying to remember, like they speak about one last thing, that once the Lakota were in starvation, and they went to the creditors to ask them to get food, or to get money to buy food, and one of the creditors said, "No money for you, go eat grass." And in one of the wars between the Lakota and the settlers, this creditor was killed, and they found him dead with grass in his mouth. And the movie ends by saying, "This is a poem." And it's this thinking of resistance as a poem. And we began thinking of the poetical economy in a way, that economy is beyond this rationale and this kind of use and exchange value and what you get for what and how much you can sell and how much you can survive. There's something more poetical in economy that we barely touch on, or that we forget in the midst of trying to survive or trying to be, alive in a way. So this movie suddenly just reminded us of things that we are living all the time, that we are trying to do all the time, but kind of also lent us a language. And by this return to that moment of history, of the struggle of the indigenous, the Indians, as they, also language fails sometimes, the indigenous Lakotas and Dakota people, we can also access the moment, the present right now. So whatever we're going to talk about now, it's somehow a poem. We don't know what it is, we still don't understand it, but maybe through poetry, language can lend us, or a new language can come out, and something that we cannot still fully understand can be accessed. Because again, we're going to talk about things that we did before October 7th. And to speak about things before is not like speaking about that we did before in the post-event, I don't know what to call this, other than in the post-genocide, in the midst of a genocide, requires a different mindset. We still don't have it. So we're going to talk about a collective that we formed through time. It's called the question of funding. And the question of funding is kind of three things. It's a question that through which we are trying to ask about the funding structures, the culture of funding, how funding changed and kind of reshaped our cultural practices, our society, our understanding of the distance, or how we see this distance between cultural practices and society as well. Of course, centered around economics. The second approach to it, it is a collective, meaning that it is us, it is a people, it is a group, it's a society in reality that is asking its questions about its culture and its practice. And finally, it is an infrastructure, meaning that it is not only speaking, but it's also about practicing these questions that we are putting forward. So the question of funding is a framework of thinking and of practicing and of working with cultural questions, cultural theory, cultural practices, focusing through economics, through the way we practice it, the way it's structured, and the way we do things. And the beginning of question of funding was actually, I need to move this. Yeah, so this is, yeah, and then we go here. Yeah, oh, no, I think, yeah. We really sent it this morning, so we're not sure what we sent. And thank you for accepting to receive it. You know, like, yeah. The beginning of to question funding, I think it belongs to to really, it's a historical question. It's a question that really began, I would say, with the 90s in Palestine. It's with the introduction of funding as a economical structure, the donor economy that came with the peace process. To be honest, like if you want to understand it well, just watch Lakota Nation against United States. It actually summarizes history in its actuality and how it worked and how it functions. But the first time we engaged with the question in our as practitioners was with Khalili Sakakini Cultural Center. There we began, I don't want to spend much time in each session, but the center was in a kind of a collapse, and then a group of practitioners, myself, Lara, Al-Harith, Rayyan, and other members that joined by time, began running the center through different kind of relations to it. This is the center, and this is the poster we did about it. This is the strategic plan. And we began practicing what we call total instituting. And that was about rethinking the relation between economy, the center, how funding comes, what is the relation between funding, do we need funding, and then what are the, what we called it, inverted resources that exist within the cultural center. If you go to the next slide. This is total instituting. It's, the idea of it comes from football. If you like to watch football, there is total football, which is, it's a Dutch thing. We live in the Netherlands now, so it's about everyone, everything is connected, everyone does everything. There's no these kind of disconnection between between administration and artistic work, between management, that everything is connected, everything does everything all the time. Everyone does everything. I'm going to talk about inverted resources because inverted resources was a health insurance. Maybe you go to the next one. Yeah. Through which we used the center itself as a resource for the community. And the inverted resources, the idea of it is that there's an embedded resources within the power structures in the community that in themselves they are an economy if you use it towards the kind of the communal and the society needs. So in the health insurance, the center can receive, is supposed to have insurance for its building, for its events, liability insurance, etc. And that also gives it accessibility to individuals' health insurance for the employees. And what we tried to do was, since we have this access and we can have a very cheap health insurance, why don't we open it to the community that as individuals who are not connected to any institution, they cannot access such reduced price health insurance. So what we did, we negotiated with different health insurance companies to give this same health insurance that we receive as a center to the anyone who wants in the community. That was and through that they can save, I think, around. It went from, if you are an individual, you have to pay, I think, around $2,000, $2,500 a year. But if you do it through the center, you pay $700. So we thought of these, the difference between the 700 and the 2,300 as a resource, as a funding that exists with us as an institution. And the question was, how do we circulate it? How do we give access to the community to such kind of resource? This was part of a longer trials to find resources within our existing structures. And then we got invited to the Lumbung in Documenta 15.
So Documenta 15, or what we like to call Lumbung 1, and which Andan yesterday was speaking about, was I mean, it took the guiding principle of Lumbung, which is kind of rural practice from pre-colonial Indonesia, and made contemporary by Ruang Grupa. And we were kind of proposing the practice of redistribution of resources from a centralized institution to kind of a collective ownership. And it really did happen at the heart of the institutional and exhibitionary logic. But so I was part of the artistic team of Lumbung 1. And many of my other colleagues, curators who were in the artistic team, were also members of collectives that were participating, like Fred in Trampoline House and Gertrude in Arts Collaboratory. And this was intentional because I mean, Ruang Grupa, and in our discussions with them, we didn't want to detach individuals from ecosystems, right? So it was very important, I think, even as a tactic for us to be both organizers, as curators, and participants at the same time. That completely changed, I think, the dynamics of the relationship in general. And since we were thinking and attempting to practice a kind of redistribution of resources, and power is one of those resources, it really kind of worked in really amazing ways. But so this is just to kind of introduce that we were working, so I was working on Lumbung, and of course the participating collectives were also working on Lumbung. We were collectively deciding on things together. Lumbung came to mean also the collective of collectives that was formed in Documenta 15. Just to give you a kind of brief, a short description of what that meant in practicality, it was, you know, budgets were distributed in equal amounts to all the collectives to be managed in an autonomous manner. And it produced a kind of network of stretching and still working in kind of ripples of about 1,500 participants and many more. And of course it led to this friction with the institution and what you are familiar, the smear campaign that you are familiar with as well. Anyway, so one of the things that we were continuously discussing was how collectives can learn from each other or be a kind of models to learn from each other. and how they practice different ways of sharing, diverting resources, what we called also transvestment. So while working on the question of funding, we asked Iltiqa Group, who are a collective from Gaza, formed in 1998, to work together and to kind of document their 20 years of working in order to learn from them. And so with many other members from the collective, and specifically Adel, curator and researcher Adel Jarrar, we spoke to them at length, interviewing them, and they were remembering together different story, their personal histories, the history of funding and making Iltiqa, because we also wanted to look at it, of course, not only from an economic, in that sense, an economic lens, being the question of funding in the sense of how they diverted and used resources, but also the production of relationality, of course. And so it was, we made a small exhibition with their paintings and conversation with them, and then all these anecdotes, stories, personal histories, and also general history of Palestine and Gaza, with which the group not only survived but thrived really in. I mean, there was a focus, of course, on the question of funding and how they received and redistributed it as well. So I wanted to read just like a couple of anecdotes for you from the different stories that they told us. One is titled "Another Type of Art Dealer Smuggling Paint into Gaza." The Israeli occupation, and this is quoting from the members of Iltiqa group, the Israeli occupation bans the entry of several food items and other goods into Gaza. Banned items include sage, jam, chocolate, fried potatoes, fabric, notebooks, flower vases, and toys. Cinnamon, plastic buckets, and combs are allowed. Under these odd and unjustified constraints, it is hard to find good quality art materials in Gaza, such as canvas, paint, and paintbrushes. Muhammad Abu Sal tells us that this does not change the expectations of art collectors that the Iltiqa artists will use high quality materials to produce their artworks. This leads the artists to rely on their relationships with friends and international organizations to smuggle art supplies from Jerusalem and elsewhere into Gaza so they can make their paintings. Often, artists ask collectors to pay them in art supplies instead of money for their participation in art exhibitions. Abu Sal also tells us that Iltiqa helps young artists by giving them free art materials so they can produce high quality works to be able to sell them outside of Gaza. Maybe just another small anecdote, and then another one just to tell you about the kind of the dilemmas they were facing in terms of the conditions of funding. So in an interview with the members of Iltiqa group, we learned that the largest grant they had received to date was $130,000 US dollars in 2020. They said that despite the significance of the grant, which was to be spent over a specified period of 20 months and with which they could develop the Iltiqa gallery and organize several art and cultural activities, the grant had also burdened them. Managing a grant of this size requires administrative expertise and capabilities they did not possess. Also, the grant only covered the salaries of 2 members of the group, which did not comply with the group's ethos of sharing the burdens fairly and receiving symbolic and financial rewards. Therefore, they redistributed the 2 salaries amongst themselves so that most of the members benefited, particularly those who were struggling financially. And so you could find amazing, actually, models of transvestment in these minute, stories about how they received and redistributed the funds, for example, but many, many other, of course, a very kind of rich practice, which also one, cannot speak about iltiqa without, well, of course, without saying we wish they could be here with us in Sharjah, but they cannot be. And not only that, is that the space that they were painting in, that they were hosting younger artists and was destroyed a few weeks ago in Gaza, and that they heard from the neighbors of the space that people were taking the remaining canvas and paintings to light fires with them in order to cook. And so you ask, they were saying, like, what does it mean, like art in the time of genocide? Maybe I just I end here.
Hello. Yeah, that's difficult start from there. But I think many Palestinians are coming to Denmark also, so we follow this in a different way. We will try to introduce a trampoline house that is, and we will come to, in the end, we will catch up on the economic questions too. But I think before we start, we need to say one person we miss here today is our chairman, Dadi Di Maximo, who couldn't come because he has a refugee passport, and that was no possibility to give him a visa. So he is greatly missed. But maybe you remember he was the one who did the amazing fashion show in Kassel. Yeah. So what we thought of doing here was to, me and Nabila, we will kind of like go down the memory lane a bit with you guys and talk about the practice of Trampoline House, and then in the end come to present day with some of the topics we're talking about now. So, maybe.
First, I will try to speak my very simple English language. First, I want to say thank you for Sharjah Art Foundation that give us the opportunity to be part of March Meeting 2024. And Trampoline House, it's a non-profit organization for asylum seeker, refugee, immigrant, and for all people who think that the Danish refugee and asylum policy should become more tidy, and for people who's fighting for the humanity in Denmark. I remember in 2009 when Trampoline House be created as a Danish artist. One of them is Joachim. and that time I have been sell as asylum in Denmark. And I meet Joachim and other Tuna Nielsen and Morten Gold is a Danish artist. We together created Trampoline House, and we start by a workshop which call it ADT.
Yeah.
And you can.
Yeah, the Asylum Dialogue Tank. I just quickly tell that it started like a artistic research at the time. Since 2001, after 9/11, the right-wing government in Denmark changed drastically the asylum system in Denmark, and all the refugees were put into camps, basically. Usually old military areas that was outside urbanized areas. And so even if they are free to move, they are technically isolated. I mean, there is no way you can come from the camp. And through making a project with the Danish Art Academy that we called Asylum Dialogue Tank, we, together with some students, we got access to the camps. And that's where we met Nabila and many others. And we started to do workshops in the camps, and very quickly came to realize that we needed to get really out of that camp. So that's how the idea of the Trampoline House came together. And there was some students from the Art Academy, and they have access to a space that is called Q Space, which is like a gallery space, and they booked it after we had done workshops for half a year, and we did kind of the first test site in this Q Space of the Trampoline House. And it was an immense success in the sense that there was a lot of Danish people who were very frustrated about not knowing what was really going on, and there were rumors and all these foreigners that was far away, and so a lot of people came, a lot of Danish people, and said they wanted to help, they wanted to do something or activate. And so we thought we were home free, basically. It was just a question of finding some money, and then we could start the Trampoline House. Of course, it wasn't that easy. It took another year, and we found a first space. During that year, we also created a thing we called Vis-a-Vis, which is like a art magazine for Danish citizen and non-citizen. It's still running, actually, but we separated Vis-a-Vis from Trampoline House because to be able to get funding, we needed to apply to big funds and stuff like that. And we had a very prominent board at the time, and they told us to separate the two entities so we could be very political with Vis-a-Vis, and then, in quotation marks, non-political with Trampoline House. So Vis-a-Vis still exists as its own entity now. And eventually, in 2010, we got our first own house, Trampoline House number 1. And yeah, maybe you could tell, but
yeah, it's our first new trampoline house. Actually, here we created some, or we was decided to created some activity that asylum seekers are needed, which they are not offered for them in the asylum centers. And then we make some activities like Danish language, because when you are a rejected asylum seeker in Denmark, you are not allowed to learn Danish because you are rejected and you have to go out of the country. And so when we get rejected, so you don't allow to learn Danish, then we make like a Danish class for refugee, and then we create, and then we had like house meeting. It's there where actually refugee share their needs, and us planning for the event like demonstration, and planning like a campaign for try to change Danish, the difficult Danish refugee asylum and asylum policy. And
I think actually one thing which is important to mention there is also that I was thinking about it yesterday when we talked about communities, that we kind of had to create a community that is not chosen. We don't choose each other. It's people who are refugees who come to Denmark to, you know, and how do you create a community when you're like so much differences? And one of the important thing was what we called refugee justice, to create a system that was not wherever you came from. Sometimes, you know, we have people from conflicting zones, and they are both refugees in the trampoline house. And how do we create a space that can handle that? And the house meeting was a way of diffusing some of these tensions, or talk about it, and to talk about the importance of, in this case, we are all refugees. And yeah, I think that was also the planning of activities, and we did a lot of demonstrations, participated in them, some of them, and maybe the kitchen was one of the most important part. I think the Friday dinner, which was also a prolongation of the house meeting. In the beginning, we were open 5 days. Yeah. Something like that.
In the first big house, we were opening 4 days, Monday to Friday, and Saturday for women club, for the women. And we were eating together every Friday, and then we created actually a women club, because in whole Denmark it's only one refugee asylum center for women, and it's a small refugee center, asylum center. It's only can be like 40 to 50 people there, and it was many women that they wanna like be little bit free and just be with the woman, because almost asylum center in Denmark there is a woman and man, and then we had also created a children club. It's for the women can be free from their children, and it was like some volunteer, they can take care of the children and make a different activities and children care, where it's the children was really happy for this activity, and we had a lot of actually volunteers. They also did a very good job and created a good children care club.
Yeah, and also there was I think almost like 75% of refugees are men, so
Yeah.
it's a very tough environment. It can be a very tough environment in the asylum camps. I just wanted to say, Sisters Cuisine, you have to talk about.
Yeah,
Sisters.
and then in actually in Women Club we created a catering. It's named Sisters Cuisine, and we also published a Sisters Cuisine cookbook, cooking without border. actually Sisters Cuisine. It's created, like I say, women from women club, because there is many women in asylum center. They are not allowed to work. They are not allowed to do nothing. Exactly when you are rejected asylum seeker in Denmark, you are not allowed to do nothing. You cannot be part of Danish society anymore. And this woman actually, they had talent, and they want to do something. They don't want just to stay in the asylum center and waiting for they serve food for them, and they need to do like something that they can show also their talent and their competence. And then we created together Sister Cuisine, where we make it the food for the events in Denmark. And then and then also this woman can also have like a small honor and like a gift card, because when they are not allowed to work in, and they are not allowed to have their own money. And we also published a book which called it Sisters Cuisine, where the women from different countries, they share their story and their relation to the food and to their home country's kitchen. And it was really, successful in the start, in the beginning. And when actually the immigration Danish service has found out that the women make food and they get like a gift card or some small honor, and then they told us that is not allowed. They should not even, they are not allowed to work, and they even are not allowed to do be part of this Sisters Cuisine catering, and they get just like a small gift card just to buy something something necessary they need. And then we decided to close Sisters Cuisine, because it was not, because like I say, Trampoline House is for asylum seekers and for immigrants, which they already have Danish residence. And we think it was not idea just to lead some they can be part of Sister Cuisine and some no. Then we decided before we closed first Trampoline House to close it. Yeah, of course the women, they are always in Trampoline House, is them who make food, because they really enjoy to make food. They really have good talent to make food, and they enjoy, but we do it just like in a voluntary way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think actually you addressed something that we were talking about also, which is the money situation. So we created, one of the first things we created was a legal counseling with lawyers, because the asylum seekers, when they are rejected, they are not allowed to get any money or make any money, but they are not allowed to have any legal help either. So it's a kind of catch-22 situation, because without the legal help, you can't do very much. Actually, I think the legal complexity around an asylum seeker is quite mind-blowing, because it's so many laws to make someone illegal. So now we have a good team of lawyers to help who does it on voluntary basis.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, because when you when you get rejected, they don't pay for the government don't pay for your lawyer. And to reopen the case, you have to find a good lawyer and you have to pay. And Trampoline House, actually, we did a really good job with the legal counseling, because, when the asylum, they come to Denmark, they don't know about which lawyer have more experience for the immigrant law. And in Trampoline House, we had special lawyer, which they are special in immigrant law, because many, they get rejected in their case because of the lawyer or some small mistake. And then it was the plan before they go to the interview, they can talk with a lawyer because the government it doesn't offer to the asylum to talk to the legal counselor before, and it was our idea to the when the asylum should ask for asylum should speak with the legal counsel in which special in immigrant law, because sometimes they can make a small mistake, and this small mistake can really put them to stay in asylum center more than 10 years with their children, and and there is many asylum seeker children, and exactly children where they born and grown up in asylum center and they live there more than 10 years. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, something very different, the camp. So this was Tone O. Nilsen, one of the founders, together with me and Morten Gahl. She wanted to, or she had this idea to create this, our own kind of art center within Trampoline House. And so she did it together with Fredrikke Hansen, who was also part of the Documenta team. And they called it CAMP, which was Center for Art and on Migration Politics, short for that. And it was a way of kind of keeping also the artistic practice within the house, because we were actually avoiding to be part of any art as much as possible, because there is always a kind of a speculative value in these things. And so until Documenta, I think we only had 2 or 3, like, where we, as Trampoline House, were part of some art events. But camp was running all through this time and became a way of talking and making art, also with many artist refugees. That was like Daddy, for instance, our chairman that couldn't be here. And then,
And then in
sad date.
after since 2010, in 2020, Trampoline House actually after 10 years should close because of Corona crisis, and because of lack funding, because that time it was difficult to find fundraising, because that time the Danish government has decided to send the asylum seeker to the Jutland, is the west of Denmark, very far away from Copenhagen, and then only people who's rejected should stay close to the area of Copenhagen. And then when these people, when those people moved to the west of Denmark, it was difficult to find the fundraising because of people. They are not very motivated to find for the rejected asylum seeker. They say, okay, they already rejected, they should go out of the country.
Yeah, actually, bizarrely enough, the Danish Social Democratic Party, ruling party, made the rejected asylum seeker explicitly criminal. So all of a sudden, some of the big funds we used to get money from, for instance, Velux, that makes these famous windows that you can open in the ceilings, they pulled back their funding, saying that they couldn't give funding to someone who was working with criminals, basically. So we closed for 2 years.
Yes, exactly. We closed for 2 years, and it was really hard for people that they used to come daily, every day to Trampoline House, because like Trampoline House has left like empty side in their life, because Trampoline was like connecting place for them to get legal counseling, get also then have a network with the Danish people, with the lawyer and everything. And it's really was difficult also for women which they were very active in a women club and with catering and everything. And then we be invited to be part of Documenta 15,
yeah.
where you can speak
Okay,
about, yeah.
that was basically our lifeline because at that point we really didn't know how to make the funding again, and Documenta 15 they had this on-site, off-site funding, so we got the quite generous amount of money, which made it possible for us to kind of reopen the trampoline house. We couldn't pay we couldn't pay a rent, but there was a church that gave their space to us on.
Yeah, we paid.
Yeah, we
small
paid a
bit.
little bit. Yes, that's true. on Friday and Sundays, I think. Yeah,
Yes, we start to open Friday and Sunday, where we also offer the same activity like we did before, and we were part of the church, and it was actually also a little bit difficult to people join us because many people, they have like different relation, and they talk maybe Trampoline has become part of church. So it was actually little bit difficult also to
yeah, and we were
be
restricted.
part.
Yeah.
Yes.
We had quite restricted time frames, and then yeah, this is image from the Documenta 15. So we did also some things in Kassel. I mean, apart from doing an exhibition, we also did some events there. We did a lot of events in Copenhagen and in asylum centers with asylum seekers, like workshops that was kind of projected to Documenta 15 and then we come to where we are today, which is kind of a new era that has started. So we realized that it's too precarious to live on art funding. It fluctuates, it's change. Sometimes there is money, sometimes there is not, and we need to kind of build something that is more sustainable. And thanks to the market right now, there is a desperate need of work labor. And so the Danish government has kind of slacked a little bit on their very harsh laws. So now you can kind of make deals. And of course, it doesn't mean that asylum seekers get work, because there is a lot of employers that are worried about how to employ an asylum seekers. They don't have a social security number. How do you do this? So we decided as a Trampoline House to become a co-op. So all the people that are part of Trampoline House, all the users are also become owners. And then we also decided that Trampoline House can do these contracts. So we can basically become like a, what do you call that? Yeah, vicar, I don't know what you call it. Like for people, when many places like hospitals and so on, they need workforce, they contact a bureau that, and so we can propose these jobs. And it can be anything from cleaning to social.
Yeah, because it's a long process, you know, when you are asylum, and if your case it's under Biennial. And if you are
running,
not
yeah.
rejected just in the immigration looking on your case, you can in somehow you can work, but it's really difficult. It's not all market they give you allowed to work in, and when you are rejected you cannot work in, and it's sometimes difficult for the
For the
for
employer.
to because it's a long process. You have to ask the immigration, and you have to make a special contract with the Danish immigration, and it's take it like 3 months to get answer. And sometimes you can get yes or no, and there is a condition if you want to ask about it. You have to sign. You have to make a special agreement with the Danish police that, okay, if you get rejected, sign in that we can send you back to your country. So even that, they make it difficult. So before you get rejected, you have to sign to go out of the country immediately. Then they can give you opportunity to work.
Yeah.
And then we want to try actually to make it a little bit easy for the employer.
Employer,
yeah.
So,
And yeah.
So basically, Trampoline House is doing that service, and I think also the fact that we were looking into with our lawyers, we were looking into what does it mean that the Trampoline House is becoming a co-op, and that the users are owners, that kind of also reinforce their cases, their asylum cases, and we even talk about how to be able to. So if an asylum seeker is sent back to their original country or where they fled from, then maybe we can send their part in the company as a way of sponsoring or giving them some money, so they don't lose money in these long years in Denmark. It can take up to 6 years just to get these processes done. And we haven't even started to talk about how that affects the asylum seekers mentally, but I think that's quite obvious.
Yeah.
Should we finish with it? We did actually a campaign. I don't know how that works. It's a video somehow.
Yeah, because
I can walk. I'm
Denmark,
physically fit. I'm not handicapped, and I'm willing to work. I can do a normal job, like any other job. I am willing to do. I'm not somebody who likes to sit and wait or who likes to beg.
I dream like one day to have my own document, and I dream to live in my own house where I can be able to move and do work by myself.
Yeah, it's something very funny. Right now in the Danish media, they speak a lot of that Denmark need people work in the health system, and exactly with the old people. They really they need more than 20,000 should work in the health system. I'm working in the health system too. And then they want to make a agreement with Thailand and India to bring people work to teach them a little bit about the health system in Denmark, and to come and help them and work in Denmark because they really need. And in the same time, there is a people who live in Denmark, and there is a people who already live in Denmark, and they know Danish culture, they know Danish language. They have been in Denmark and live in asylum center more than 5 years, more than 10 years. And they don't lead them to work, and they just want to bring people from out of Denmark to work, even they don't know the language, they don't know the Danish language, Danish culture, and everything. And there is really many people that they really want to work. They also want to work with the old people, where they really now Denmark needs people to work there. So it was also our idea to maybe make a deal with the Danish immigration service to we want to give work to these people that already they are in Denmark. They can work instead for bring them from other country. Yeah.
I think maybe we should give some time to last speaker. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And sorry for my bad English.
Hello? Hello? Hi. No, I'm okay. Thanks. Well, thank you to the Sharjah Art Foundation for inviting myself and Euge, Andre Euge, who sadly can't be here because he wasn't given a transit visa to pass through Paris on the way here. Thank you. I'd also like to say thank you to the other presenters. It's very hard to hear when you're sitting on the stage, which is the reason why I went down there. And I think what came out of listening to everybody else is, as I think we all know, there's complications around this word collectives, but what's really coming across to me is the importance of fellowship or friendship or eating together, all these actually very simple things that are coming together from all these presentations, really. And I'd also like to say, Euge and I visited Trampoline House, can't remember when, but we had a fabulous time there. So it was so nice to see just pictures of the interior again. I mean, it was a place that was full of fellowship and friendship and food. So we're going to start. Oh, have I got a? Oh, yeah. Sorry. Now, see if I'm a multitasker or not. Oh, this is just a picture of one of the exhibits that was made at the Ghetto Biennale. And so this is, how do I play videos?
Ok, Artistes Résistance, c'est un mouvement. Nous commençons depuis dans les années 2001. Résistance, ça veut dire, résistance, ça veut dire pour nous, c'est lutter contre l'injustice sociale. Ouais, c'est la optique ça qui fait nous travaillons sur le mot résistance.
Hi, I'm Leah Gordon. I'm one of the co-directors of the Ghetto Biennale. The first Ghetto Biennale in 2009 surpassed all my expectations. It was a chance to see creative community action up close. I witnessed that the creative act can intensely connect people from diverse genders, sexualities, classes, races, and nationalities.
The reason I think it's important is that the art world tends to operate in quite restricted kind of ways, really. And I think particularly when you're looking at collaboration, cross-cultural collaboration, it tends to be quite safe. And what I understand and what I know about the Biennale, it was certainly not off the shelf in terms of a typical Biennale.
And I guess I would say also another form of fellowship is music and dance. And there's certainly quite a lot of that. And I think it's interesting. I mean, many years back, when we were first asked to present at a conference about the Ghetto Biennale, somebody in the audience, the director of quite an established Biennale, challenged our use of the word Biennale, saying that after seeing the footage of people dancing and singing, what we had was a festival. And I have to say that after that, Euge and I thought, well, our work is done. So I would firstly now like to, this is a short statement from Andre Euge, who can't be here, and he things are a bit tense in Haiti at the moment, but this is what he has to say to you today. The Ghetto Biennale is one of the most important things I've done in my life. And every 2 years, people come and visit, work with us, walk in the streets. This makes us feel more involved in the art world. But this is not just affecting the lives of the artists here. We have a rule to hire only people in the neighborhood. As Jamaican artist Ebony Patterson said, keep it in the roux. So on this picture, this is Rosemary. So she cooks. We give her some money at the beginning. She cooks and sells all the food every day for the artists that are visiting, but she can also make some money. There's Molège, who's normally a furniture maker, does all the carpentry for the installs. If an artist needs someone to play music, they hire local DJs, such as Bois Sèche, and they hire local sound systems. We definitely ask artists to not hire people from up the hill from the wealthier neighborhoods. In this way, it benefits everybody downtown in our neighborhood. And it also shows that there are many skills inside our community. And this is important. So the people that weld the old cars in the neighborhood, they weld for the artists. Our friend Claude, he works as an artist, but he also works with visiting artists playing drums and singing. And Michel Lafleur, he's an artist, but he's also a barbershop painter. So then he gets the work to paint all the signage for us. And finally, Immacula, a voodoo priestess, has taught many young visiting artists many aspects of voodoo. He says, as an artist, I believe that this is something that God allows you to do. And all the time we're creating new things. And sometimes you're not recognized at the time, but your work waits for people in the future to see. As an artist, living in Haiti is very hard, but you believe in what you do and you just do it. I have so many works in my studio, but I still keep making more. The problem we have now is it's difficult for collectors to come and visit at the moment because of the political situation. And it's also nearly impossible to get visas to travel. And that's the reason I'm not here to speak with you all. But I hope you get a chance to have a look at our work. And that's also, he'd like to add, I think, well, I'm going to add for him, that's what Documenta 15 gave us the chance to do. So, you can see this list here. This is a list of the countries from which people have come to work in the artist resistance neighborhood. So, it's quite a lot, quite a large geographical span. And as you see in the short video, the Ghetto Biennale comes primarily from a frustration at the lack of mobility, that is suffered by majority-class Haitian artists. And to give some sort of idea of the history, Eugene and I started with the name. It was like we put together these two words, ghetto and biennale, a bit like nuclear fusion, two words that really shouldn't go together. And so, in a way, without any specific outcomes, because Eugene and I are both artists, I think we didn't work it in that way that we had specific outcomes or this is what we'll do in order to achieve this. We just went, there's these two words. If we put them together, what could we build behind that? So, we started with the name and then kind of came up with the structure and everything else behind that. This was painted for the first Ghetto Biennale, and this is the earthquake happened 2 weeks after the first Ghetto Biennale, and I went back quite soon afterwards. So to explain artist resistance, I think it's very important because I think there's so many different ideas of what a group of people coming together can really be. Artist resistance is, in a way, the name of a group of artists who live in two sort of, close neighborhoods in downtown Port-au-Prince. And it's got a shifting membership. And, in this neighborhood, there are friendships, then there are enmities, people join, people leave. So it has no rules, it just has a kind of shifting kind of membership. The Ghetto Biennale in itself is not a collective. Over the years, I think we've evolved into a cross-class and cross-nationality community linked through the often intense experience of creating together, or not necessarily together, maybe sometimes in parallel, in a difficult working environment. And this, again, it brings up this thing, this intense experience builds up friendship, care, trust, and fellowship, and also humor. And I think humor is really important. Humor kind of binds everything together. And so I'll just show some of the kind of, this was done by Jessie Darling, and who came to the first Ghetto Biennale, and she wanted to create a trash church. And soon the whole community took this church over. It became a rap house, it became a place to screen films, it became a place to kind of hold community meetings. This is Ebony Patterson's work. Anyway, I'm not going to go through them, I'll just try and click through them. And also I think, just to add to this conversation about collectives, there is a kind of history within Haitian culture of collectivity. And a Haitian historian called Michel Rolfe Trouillot, in his fantastic book called State Against Nation, he kind of looks at the way in which the peasantry after the revolution separated themselves from the Haitian state. The Haitian state tended to be quite west-looking in a way, west-facing. And they had three mechanisms in a way for this kind of retreat from the state. And he mentions voodoo, the lakou, and Creole. And he looks at collectivism because, in a way, voodoo is a very collective religion. And it's also a religion that performs a history, and a history of the enslaved Africans, a history of their ancestry, and a history of what they've been through to be in Haiti. And this is performed through music and through dance and through song. And then also the lakou is a way in which the Haitian peasant, they live in a lakou, which is a family-based yard. So lakou in a way means yard, but it also means in the countryside, a group of family houses that are linked. But also the lakou is a way in which the larger community come together every time work needs to be done in the fields. So when work needs to be done in the fields, hoeing, then it's the larger community that does that hoeing. So the lakou is a small family compound, but it is also the larger group of people that then come together to kind of do the harder work in the fields. And also Creole, I think, is a kind of collective decision. A way to retreat from the state again is that the language of the state in Haiti is French. And so Creole is a way of, in a way, refusing the state in a kind of collective way by the majority class in Haiti. So, I'm not clicking fast enough, am I? So, I would also like to, maybe the only other thing I really want to mention is how the Ghetto Biennale has kind of dismantled many, I would say, dearly held art world tropes. And one is, interestingly, institutional critique. And many of the artists that get attracted to the Ghetto Biennale, the visiting artists, they kind of very much come from a kind of background of institutional critique. And then they're kind of really surprised when they get to Haiti, because the artists in Haiti are searching for the institution, because there's no institutions in Haiti, so they want the institution to plug themselves into. So that's always a very confusing situation for a visiting artist. And I think the word collaboration is also another kind of art world term that gets really dismantled at the Ghetto Biennale, because there was an artist who came to one of the first Ghetto Biennales, and she doesn't mind me telling this anecdote. She wanted to collaborate with a local tailor, and she'd been to Cal Arts, and she'd done, you know, a kind of relational aesthetics degree and a social practice degree, and she said to the tailor, "This is great, we're collaborating." And I know Jonas very well, and he's quite a pedant, but, you know, necessarily so. And he just said, "No, we're not collaborating. I'm your employer, I'm employee, and you will pay me." And it's as simple as that. And she, you know, I mean, at first it was like it wasn't going to fit in with her kind of art college credentials, but finally she had to accept. So in a way, it showed how the word collaboration can sometimes be an invisibility cloak for hierarchies and power relationships. So, but it turns out in Haiti, most of the artists would just like to be paid. And then the other one is the dematerialization of the author or the artwork. And many of the artists that are attracted to the Ghetto Biennale are also very interested in the dematerialization of authorship and the artwork. And then, of course, they kind of meet artists in Haiti who their kind of dream is to be in a white cube art show in New York and sell their art for really high prices. So there's this kind of frustration and tension, I think, that's very much actually gives a very exciting dynamic, which is at the heart of the Ghetto Biennale. So I'm just, this was a way in which we wanted to connect the hotel that the artists, the visiting artists, are staying at with the local neighborhood. So we used to do a parade with one of Eugene's sculptures from the hotel. It's about, you know, like a 40-minute parade. And that was a way of kind of going through a lot of other neighborhoods, advertising. We would hand out leaflets, and a way of just telling everybody else that this was happening and going on. So I'm just, you can see that people kind of, you know, it's a very, very different place to kind of try and show work in. We kind of look at you know, it's a very different way of installing and finding spaces. This was a young Japanese artist who gave a lecture about arte povera. And, you know, there was real excitement because he was talking about using poor materials, which, of course, the Haitian artists are. And the main excitement, I have to say, was when they asked how much do arte povera sell their works for. There was a ripple of excitement through the audience. So, I mean, the great thing is these are things that, like, because we had no set outcomes, there's a lot of Haitian diaspora who use the Ghetto Biennale as their first time, that are born in the, you know, France or New York, that gives them the chance the first time to come back and actually experience Haiti themselves in a way that their families have obviously said to them, "Don't go back, it's not safe." So this is a Haitian artist. This is just showing you how we use the neighborhood. I don't know. This is actually to do with the Sharjah Art Foundation, because I met Alana Heiss last time I was here, and we became friends, and she brought Clock Tower Radio to the next Ghetto Biennale. We called it Radio Shack. And this is the building that we built for Clock Tower Radio. And then Radio Shack basically transmitted locally and internationally the whole way through the Ghetto Biennale. And we invited not just the people taking part, but artists from all around Port-au-Prince to come. And we even had like a string quartet in that little building. That's a project that we did when we thought, oh, let's try and give a prize like the Venice Biennale. So we had a voting form for everybody, and this is who won, which was a collective of local female artists that had made a film about what it's like to be a female artist in Haiti. This was Museum of Trance, which was Henrika Naumann, came from Germany and kind of tried to make links between kind of voodoo trance and German rave music of the 90s. And we had kind of quite interesting rave nights. So often I do feel that the strongest art, the art that gets enjoyed more by the Haitian population, is art that kind of has a kind of resonance with Haitian culture. So this was a Martinican artist who made this, which is kind of based on the Haitian voodoo flags. It was quite nice the way there was a Dominican artist that created this sculpture, and then by night another dance group kind of used that as a place that they could dance and perform. This is another install area that by night became like a rap venue. And this was a really great piece of theatre people did, and it was performed in the local graveyard. So I kind of going to move on to show that. So what I'm finally going to say is, in a way, the Ghetto Biennale, in a way, I think was conceived as a kind of Trojan horse. I mean, we didn't realize it could be a Trojan horse that would give us so much fun. But it was kind of a way, a mechanism to promote Haitian majority class art for artists that don't have the mobility and chance to travel around the world and travel to other biennales. I mean, they could see that there were biennales, but only Haitian middle class artists ever got invited or could even get the visas to go. So in a way, you know, like if we kind of finally dismount, I'll just have to go through these very quickly. This is the, so you can see how people have to live with the artworks. Yes. This was, I mean, this was a really good one because it was the Haitian Revolution and everybody was so kind of inspired. I think it turned out as the closer we keep the theme to like Haitian history and reality, the better. So to go back to the Trojan horse, so since, you know, the first Ghetto Biennale, this is all the places that members of artist resistance, if you imagine that before the Ghetto Biennale, only 2 members of artist resistance had ever left the country. And then through basically artist-to-artist networks. So this is not based on, you know, being part of institutions or impressing MoMA. This is young, usually not very rich artists, visiting artists that come, and they become so inspired that they kind of work really hard and make sure people are, Haitian artists are invited, as Fred did to visit, invite 4 or 5 artists to Trampoline House. And then through that, you know, they've managed to get into larger shows. So like if we kind of dismount the old Trojan horse, because of that, and thanks to Alana Heiss, we managed to get the director of Pioneer Works to a Ghetto Biennale, and then that, you know, enabled us to do this show, which is the first survey show of majority class Haitian art to be shown in New York. And, but then to move on to Documenta, and for us, you know, the gift of Documenta was the fact that we got this incredible church as our venue. And I think what the church did for us, I mean, besides the church was astoundingly beautiful, it allowed us to make that connection of Haitian art. Haitian art uses, I mean, in a kind of a lot of artist resistance work in a kind of Mad Max way both kind of points to a dystopian future, but also references a past of struggle, but a historical past, you know, based on the ancestors, ancestral spirits, the Haitian Revolution. So we were able to use and spirituality. So we were able to use this church to make all those links between Haitian history, Haitian spirituality, and kind of reference actually possibly they don't have a dystopian future, because at the moment they seem to have a dystopian present. So and as you can see, you've got a sculpture by André Euge there, but then Haitian artist Edouard Duval-Carrier presented these huge kind of mirror portraits of the Haitian revolutionary leaders. And so I'll finish there, basically. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you all for these very thorough presentations. And I think it was great that we did do all of these thorough presentations, because I think these are really needed in order to understand where you're working, how you're working. So, which is sort of something I'm going to bring the conversation to. You can really not talk or hear about any of these I'm going to call them organizations. You can call them anything, organism, institutions that you're working with without thinking about of course, the social, but political landscape that is so heavy that you're working within. So without an explanation of that, you cannot really understand any of the structures that you have founded, that you have worked through, that you have worked with. And I think that's a question I would like to bring up. Political, but then I was also thinking economic, emotional infrastructures that you're working with. So, Yazan, yesterday you were saying, I'm going to start doing merch. I don't know if this is something, but this thing of we are angry, we are sad, that's on your hat right now. I think this is something what we should, like the political infrastructures that we're operating in, that you are operating in, I guess we're all operating in, and then also the emotional structure that those political structures that do bring, maybe even helplessness. I mean, I was thinking in the, like, I want to ask a couple of questions, but I was just thinking of like that feeling and the propensity towards action that you all sort of think with. Sorry, we cannot hear one another. I think it's much better over there, but here on the stage it's very hard for us to hear one another, so we are cuddled together. But this, I mean, Altika, like when you're showing that, how do you actually like emotionally sort of start working with that and through that? So I do want to, I'm gonna like sort of maybe ask you all to speak, and we can go this direction, because I actually do want you to talk a little bit more about Darya, because I think it's relevant to this conversation, and it will sort of highlight a little bit more of your working and thinking. But just two things. I think arts is, just because we're in an arts structure right now, we're talking within it. So we have to sort of like think through it. I think you all have a certain position with how you work through the structures of art. And I mean that in terms of both money and economy, because economy at the end of the day is nothing but trust relationships, and they can be very formalized or they can be very informal, and this is sort of like that transition between the informality of money, economy, labor, exchange, and the transition between that informality and formality is what makes these actions of yours possible. So that is something that I want you to articulate a little bit more. I think you did bring it up all the time, but if you want to sort of like speak to that, because I'm thinking of mobility, it's like mobility is something that is also present in all of these, and the lack of mobility. When you talked about how do we manage the funds or the lack of knowledge accumulation in terms of managing funds, like that means something, and that lacking is something that, you know, like determines how you position yourself in terms of these larger arts infrastructures. So I think each of you have, I think, a little bit of a, what do you call it, differing positions in terms of how you choose to deal with that, and I would like us to sort of like open that up a little bit. And then this thing about the arts, I mean, historically, there is a relationship to representation and presentation and visibility. Arts is visually, it's visual, it's visibility at the end of the day. But then, like you were saying, how do you use tactics of invisibility to do a lot of things too? And I think that ties very directly with how you navigate around funding structures, how you choose to take them on and sort of deal with them. So I think maybe we can go this way, and I think maybe, Yazan, you can also sort of touch upon Daira within all of that framework, however you choose to sort of take it on.
Oh, hi. Yes, funding is kind of, you know, very kind of a crucial, I think, question about the Ghetto Biennale. When we first came up with the idea, we had no funding. And I think at the end, I did think, well, if the worst comes to the worst, I'll just put it on a credit card. But, but I mean, in a way, our lack of funding does create a kind of hierarchy in itself, because we don't invite people, we have an open call, and everyone that comes, they have to pay their own travel, their own accommodation, and pay for their own materials when they're in Haiti. And that, of course, means there is quite a lot of the world's population that wouldn't have access to come to the Ghetto Biennale, because it is quite an expense. And we were aware of how that chooses a demographic. But at the same time, that seemed better, that it seemed the only solution rather than us spend a lot of time fundraising. And it was interesting, actually. I was kind of co-curating with kind of quite a famous curator, and he said, no, you should spend the rest of your year fundraising so you can invite A-listers to your Ghetto Biennale, and then, because you've got all the A-listers, then you'll get all the press coming, and that will give greater visibility to the Haitian artists. And I suppose he, to a certain extent, had a point, but then, as I think we've shown, the kind of artists that have come seem to be, you know, partly, you know, to do with social practice, that they've been very determined to then help and fundraise themselves to get the Haitian artists to travel. So that was one kind of complication, and to be honest, we only get we do every Ghetto Biennale on $17,000, and that's all the funding we get, and that's basically based on the Soros Foundation and actually Jim Beam, bizarrely, and so and thanks to those two fantastic millionaire supporters that we have, but you know. We spend the whole of our lives raising money, and then that becomes, you know, both Euge and I are artists. We kind of like doing this, but we don't like raising money. So I think in the end, you have to take the shortcomings of having this small amount of funding and kind of run with it.
Yeah, I can totally identify with that. We, however, are in the opposite spectrum. We are in a Protestant Scandinavian country, very strict structures, and to kind of get around the funding issue there, I mean, there is always there is state funding you can seek and so on, but there is a very strong limit to it, and it has to be repurposed to everyone. So it's difficult to find a way of getting a continuity, and also, as I said before, with the problem with the refugee cause is that sometimes it's popular, sometimes it's not. Depends on a little bit who is in the government, and also we need to act all the time, so we can't wait for it, and that's why we started to look into these structures that actually does exist in Denmark, funnily enough, which are these cooperative structures, and so we kind of embark on a bit of a new trip now. I mean, we keep doing applications and stuff like that because it's a very expensive country, and you have to pay for everything. So it's difficult to also just a bus ticket costs, enormous amount of money. So that's the practicality of it. And actually, I was also just wanted to catch up on the aesthetic of things. It's kind of interesting. I saw when we did this presentation, I look at it myself and I see it's funny. There is, like, we call it like trampoline house aesthetic, which is like kind of absolute non-aesthetic because it's something that everyone has to be able to access. So we purposefully kind of avoided all kind of Danish design, sleekness, all these kind of things that ostracize people, and yeah, that's just an end comment I give it for.
I mean, in terms of the question of funding, of course, I mean, this was a question that everyone is constantly asking in Palestine because of a donor's economy that started after the Oslo Accords, but also much before. I mean, the generations before us of artists, I mean, Slimane and Nabila being two that we'll speak in a bit, where Tajrib al-Ibda started out of actually a boycott towards Israeli products and produced an aesthetic form, right? And so this kind of economic and the question of funding produces aesthetic forms. Like one of the stories that Muhammad Hawaji was telling us is that because he cannot move paintings from in and outside of Gaza, but a certain size can be entered and leave Gaza, then he makes a big painting in 4 parts, right? And reassembles it together. So you have aesthetic forms that are produced by political and economic kind of circumstances, which I think is quite amazing. But I wanted to also speak about two things that you spoke to in a sense. One is transvestment, and which is a kind of a tactic which we used in the Lumbung, which Yazan actually calls money laundry, and it is a kind of redistribution of resources where you can kind of move from one economic realm to another, so from a capitalist into a commons, for example, economy. And in Lumbung 1, it was a matter of thinking, okay, these resources of the art world are everyone's resources. In a sense, it's only a matter of ideologically thinking about those resources. Who are they for, and who has the power to kind of decide upon them. But I wanted to also speak about this emotional infrastructure and of course, the solidarity that grew out of Lumbung. There was this building of trust and friendship that were already there, but that were also new. And it was amazing how we kind of were using different tools from Ruan Grupa, but also from other collectives. So there was the Lumbung from Ruan Grupa and the Majlis as a form of collectivizing and working together. And then, for example, there were other forms like the Agrau, which were introduced to us by Le 18 from the Amazigh tradition. And these were all tools of collective participation that we could use during our majlises or assemblies, and which made it also very quick and easy to be able to respond to the media and smear campaigns that were coming our ways, and we could very quickly produce texts and statements and working together. But not only that, it was a support, of course. I mean, we all kind of supported in each other with the labor, emotionally, with our children.
Maybe to add to that, like maybe just to say, like every economical structure has its own cultural aesthetics, no? Or like cultural practices and artistic aesthetics. So in a way, one can really kind of also argue that with funding and the time we spend to get the funds and then report about the fund, there is a kind of attention, like, or even less time to put on the actual work itself, no? Like we kind of, you know, like once you put the funding applications, if you decide not to apply for funds, then you have much more time to work on culture. And I remember we were once saying, like, you know, we wanted to apply for a funding, but the regulations were so hard. And then we say, do you want to get the money or do you want to do the culture? No, like it is in a way a very time demanding, exhausts the energy towards making cultural work financial work. No, like, so in a way, it also, of course, I would say, seeing how funding works in Europe now, it is a censorship practice. No, like I don't know. I would say I'm used to the traditional type of censorship, which is you do the artwork and then it gets checked and then it gets censored. No, like, but the artwork is there. So it goes underground, no? Like then it's distributed differently. Whereas within the funding processes and the applications, the artwork is censored before, no? Like in the application itself. And so it gets blocked even before it's realized to go underground. So, so funding works in a multi kind of political realms. But I also want
just agree with you in a lot of ways. There was one time I was in Haiti and somebody said, oh, we know that there's a European Union grant you can apply for. And they sent me an Excel file. And I mean, I've seen an Excel file before, but it was so complicated. I mean, after a day, I gave up. And then they said, and of course, it's, you know, it's up in the hills in the middle class area. Then they said, oh, get your driver to drive you up. And so they took it for granted that we had drivers. And so finally they sent a driver for me and they kind of filled in the form for me. But I mean, it was so painful. It was excruciatingly painful. So what I could see then is the way in which European Union money arrives in Haiti and then circulates around the hills of Pétionville and never ever can filter down to majority class artists because they don't have bank accounts, they don't have computers, they don't know how to use Excel files, you know, so there's that, you know, the structure of funding excludes huge parts of the population.
And also forces many artists to institutionalize in a way that becomes a heavy body to carry around all the time, no? Like, because, yeah, like that's definitely the history of many grassroots movements in Palestine in the 90s when they had to become institutions so that they can receive funding, and once they became institutions, they became, I would say, even addicted to funding. No, like there is a certain kind of demand within the bodies that were formed through funding that they keep need funding. But that's the thing about funding, that it's been turned into a kind of financial structure. It's been a kind of co-opted by the neoliberal economy. Because to think of funding outside of neoliberalism, it exists everywhere. And when we did this, maybe about Daira, in the question of funding also during Documenta, we were and still developing this bottom-up currency funding system, exchange system. And the idea of it that if you take funding outside from neoliberalism, you discover that we practice it every day. And we were looking at the nuqut. And nuqut is the money that people bring in weddings to the new wed. And it's in a way a communal debt that you receive that kind of money in your wedding and you are supposed to pay it back in the next generation, no? And it's like ongoing practices of funding that goes within the society outside of this, application, like even outside this kind of neoliberal type of debt, no? Debt is like kind of the money producer in financial economies. But debt can be it's a resource within community, and communities depend on each other through these kind of understanding of debt and understanding that they're indebted to each other, no? So we were producing this, we're using the blockchain now because it's in fashion, but it's not totally dependent to the technology, but it's how do you kind of create an economy based on our need to each other and our dependency on each other through time. So now we are developing it and trying to also propose it to be used. So that's, we had it in the presentation, but we jumped over it, so we'll...
Just one last thing about funding, I think, is as well, that I can tell with funding applications, the ones that expect you to have outcomes, the minute you're expected to put, if you're artists, you want to do an event and you don't want to know the outcome. You want to experiment, you want to learn from it. The minute you have to put an outcome before, it's putting the cart before the horse, then you're held back by that. You're not allowed any experimentation. You're never going to be surprised. You're not allowed to be surprised. No.
Yeah. Very scientific, no? Like it is, you do the experiment saying this will be the result. Yes. And,
I mean, Trampoline House lost it when we were at the peak of our funding. That's when we were the most vulnerable. Yeah. So that, I totally see what you're talking about, because that it became like a self-sustaining system, and we couldn't, as soon as one fund got out of it, the whole thing crumbled. We hadn't built a flexible structure under it. So it was kind of thanks to Documenta that we kind of remembered how we how we had to work in a way.
Yeah, and just to say, I think now in Palestine there are groups that are trying to enter culture through economy. And when they do that, they actually go to the basis of economical relations and production, and they go to the land. So these farmers, these dancers sometimes, artists, or people in culture, no? Because when you come out from funding, culture becomes more inclusive than funding and being an artist within culture, etc. And there's these kind of groups of artists that are going back to the land to think economy from the land and from the land up, no? Like, as they say, from the ground to the left. And it's once you do that, you create an economy that creates its own aesthetics and its own cultural practices, which is more liberating, more emancipating than cultural economy that's based on the donor and the donor economy.
Yeah. This is, we wish this conversation could go on forever. And actually, like, that's a great place to maybe finish on, because we were talking about the precarity of arts funding like yesterday, and you sort of commented about that. And the blockchain thing, for me, it's like interesting, and connecting it to what you last said, the relationship to the land, because I mean, the whole thing is that funding structures are very like nation and boundary based, and then blockchain is the thing about it is that it is that it has the mobility of the birds and the fish that we were sort of referring to. So how do you, yeah, there's a tension there, which is sort of the tension that we're talking about today, and that we wish that we could go on further with. Unfortunately, we will not have time for questions either, because we did exhaust all of our allocated time, but we are here, so if you please have questions, feel free to find all the presenters and tailor it to them. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for making this panel possible.